Now, coinciding with President Obama's phone call to the Prime Minister today, a former US ambassador is in Australia. Cynthia Schneider is here with the Australian-American Leadership Dialogue. We spoke to her while she was here about the relationship between the US and Australia in light of the presidential election campaign. Well, Cynthia Schneider, you've left the US, one election campaign, and flown to Australia, right into another. Let's talk about what's happening in your home, first of all. What odds do you put on a Donald Trump presidency?
Well, I would love to, I think I would be reassuring you. I would love to reassure you and say, you know, there's no chance that would happen, but I think if there's one thing that we have learned about this election cycle, it is do not predict, because the game's off. It's like nothing ever before. What I can tell you, though, is the way the election map is shaping up. It would be a huge challenge for Donald Trump to get elected, and that's partially him and partially the Republican Party. The Republican Party, by nursing this Frankenstein monster of the Tea Party, has painted itself into an ever narrower corner. So basically, Donald Trump is appealing to angry white men.
And what does that mean in November? Why do you say
there are not enough of them to elect him? There are a lot of them, but he has narrowed the path, and the Republicans themselves have been doing this as well, by alienating minorities. You might have noticed his comments about Latinos and Hispanics. That is a huge proportion of our electorate, and women. Women are the majority of the electorate. So he's alienated minorities, alienated women.
And that served a purpose during the process that he's gone through already, but you're saying it becomes counterproductive from here on.
And, you know, a white male strategy for getting elected simply numerically can't work. So that is hugely challenging. I could perhaps, though, give a sense of why he has the support that he does, because I get the impression, and I can understand it well, that it's utterly mystifying to people. It goes back to the 2008 financial crisis. And I can't honestly explain why the feelings about that are exploding now, but they are. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's also the movie The Big Short, this upcoming movie with George Clooney and Julia Roberts.
You're talking about the bailouts, the protection of banks, the unemployment that went with everyday workers.
Absolutely. This sense that the people have suffered. And people have suffered tremendously and have not recovered. They hear the economy's on the upswing, but they don't feel it. In fact, what you've done here, boy, Americans would love to do that.
Well, it is a different situation altogether, the Australian democracy. Now, if we look at the implications, Hillary Clinton, I suppose, is a known quantity in a lot of her views in relation to Australia, the region, the pivot, security. Donald Trump, less so. What do you think, say, on the trade front, either a Clinton or a Trump presidency might mean for Australia or regional agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
I'd like to say when and if Hillary Clinton is elected. We know that she is really great in the United States at working across the aisle. She built a lot of alliances with Republicans when she was senator, and she does that very effectively. Equally, she's of course known around the world and has relationships with many world leaders. She understands that it's a global, connected world, and she is going to build and strengthen those relationships. Now, I know you've heard something different in the campaign, and you know, you have to campaign. But honestly, I would be very surprised if she didn't, once elected, campaign equally strongly for the TPP.
And what about the flip side for Trump? As much as he has shocked and awed people thus far, do you give any credence to the idea that in office he may be far less extreme, more inclusive, get traditional establishment people around him? Is that likely, do you think?
Well, the great thing about Donald Trump is that we really have no idea what he stands for other than self-promotion. But I do think you're right in saying he's not ideologically driven like Ted Cruz was, for example. Only it's the ideology of self. So the possibility that, were he to be elected, he might turn out to be relatively moderate, I think is entirely possible. What's interesting that he said, and this I would kind of expect, is he said he wants to throw out the whole foreign policy establishment and bring in new faces.
And that's where it might get interesting for countries like Australia, I suppose.
Well, get pretty interesting for us, too.
All right. Look, there is so much more we could canvass with you, Cynthia Schneider, but we have time against us. So just for your observations today, we thank you and enjoy the rest of your time in Australia.
Thank you so much. I might just leave you with one comment, a joke from my friend Norm Ornstein, one of our great political commentators, who said, the best we can hope for with Donald Trump is maybe he'll leave us for a younger country. I know one.
Let's see how that goes. Whether he's welcome or not, we'll have to wait and see. Cynthia Schneider.
Thank you very much.